The origins of the Arab slave trade can be traced back to the intersection of several factors, including tribal warfare, the spread of Islam, and the establishment of trade routes between Africa and the Arabian Peninsula. Arab traders, who had for centuries interacted with African tribes, capitalized on the opportunities offered by existing intra-African conflicts and raids. These skirmishes among various African tribes often resulted in the capture of prisoners who were subsequently traded to the Arab merchants. Another important milestone in the development of the Arab slave trade was the spread of Islam in the 7th century. The teachings of Islam allowed the enslavement of non-Muslim prisoners of war, while generally prohibiting the enslavement of Muslims. This religious sanction not only provided a moral and legal framework for the ongoing slave trade, but also, with the rapid spread of Islam in Africa, amplified the scale of the trade due to the increasing encounters between Muslims and non-Muslims. Early Muslim rulers, following their religious and legal codes, also instituted the system of jizya, or a tax levied on non-Muslims under Muslim rule. Those who couldn't afford to pay this tax often had to sell themselves or their family members into slavery. This added another source of slaves to the Arab slave trade. The Arabian Peninsula's geographic proximity to the African continent also played a crucial role in the establishment and growth of the Arab slave trade. The Red Sea and the Indian Ocean served as natural highways for the movement of goods and people between Africa and the Arabian Peninsula. In the 7th century, Arabs established the port of Sofala in modern-day Mozambique to ensure a consistent supply of gold and slaves from the interior of Africa. Likewise, the trans-Saharan routes that connected North Africa with sub-Saharan Africa also served as a conduit for the slave trade. In the early stages, the Arab slave trade was not a central or uniformly managed enterprise. Instead, it was a series of uncoordinated operations conducted by independent traders who operated under the general legal and moral framework provided by the Islamic teachings. As such, the scale, methods, and conditions of the slave trade varied greatly depending on the time, place, and people involved. Over the centuries, however, the Arab slave trade evolved and grew in complexity and scale. The initial opportunistic trade in war captives gradually gave way to systematic raids and slave hunting expeditions. Some African kingdoms, such as the Kingdom of Congo, established regular trading relationships with the Arabs, exchanging slaves for goods like textiles and metalware. The demand for slaves in the Arabian Peninsula and the wider Islamic world increased over time due to several factors. Slaves were employed as servants, soldiers, administrators, and laborers. The expansion of agricultural activities, especially the growth of date palm plantations, significantly increased the demand for slave labor. Additionally, slaves were used in the construction of public buildings and monuments that symbolized the wealth and power of the ruling class. As such, owning slaves became a status symbol among the wealthy and the powerful. It is important to note that the Arab slave trade, despite its name, was not solely an Arab enterprise. It was deeply intertwined with the local African societies and their political, economic, and social structures. Many African elites and rulers were active participants in the slave trade, capturing and selling their war captives, debtors, and criminals. Moreover, many African societies had a long tradition of slavery and servitude themselves that predated the Arab slave trade. In such societies, the arrival of the Arab traders simply provided another outlet for their slaves. In conclusion, the origins of the Arab slave trade lie in a complex web of religious, economic, geographic, and social factors. It was a system that grew out of the existing structures of African societies and Arab merchant networks, and was further facilitated by the religious and legal frameworks of Islam. It was neither a uniform nor a centrally managed enterprise, but a series of interconnected operations conducted by individuals and groups with varying scales, methods, and conditions. The Arab slave trade had a profound impact on both Africa and the Arabian Peninsula, resulting in significant demographic, social, and cultural changes. The effects of this massive human trafficking system are still palpable today, centuries after its official abolition. As such, the Arab slave trade remains a critical component of the historical narrative, essential to understanding the historical and socio-cultural dynamics of Africa and the Middle East. However, it's important to remember that the Arab slave trade was a deeply inhumane and exploitative system marked by unimaginable human suffering and loss. Any examination of its origins and history should be conducted with the utmost respect for the dignity and resilience of its countless victims. Thank you for watching.